So, here we are. We're actually talking about the new update that Behavior has given us regarding the Dead by Daylight chapter, regarding Dungeons and Dragons and the Lich. Most importantly, the Lich has needed many changes. I think he's a very interesting killer and could be a very, very fun killer, but once we start getting to like the medium to upper echelon of players, aka higher MMR, he's very counterable and doesn't hold a lot of strength against survivors that just kind of know what they're going up against. Thankfully, it seems like from what I've seen in a lot of the projected changes that they are announcing today, there's a lot of things that they're addressing that I think are going to be super helpful. Super helpful. So let's go ahead and get into that. So one of the big changes for the Lich that's coming is, I really like this. This is a huge buff, is the reduced spell cooldown. It's going down to 38 seconds from 50, which is going to be great because less time just kind of bumming around and waiting for your spells to come off cooldown. It just sucks. It's not a very good feeling, being left in the middle of no man's land with nothing to do, especially when there are add-ons that give you benefits for having all of your spells on cooldown. This is going to help kind of like instigate. This is going to help players want to use your spells more often rather than keeping them reserved when already your spells are so punishing to use. That and on top of that, there's a decreased charge time for spells. It's not a huge change. It's not a well, I say it's not huge, but I mean, going from like a third of a second down to, 1/5 of a second. That's huge. 0.2 seconds over 0.33. Yeah, that's not bad. So it's just going to help things feel more fluid. You can use your spells more often. They're going to be off cooldown more often, and you're not as punished just for charging it in your hand. Even in those situations where you start charging your spell and then the survivor adjusts, and you're like, okay, well, the survivor adjusted, and I don't want to use my spell now because they did this. You're not as punished for just holding the spell in your hand. It's very similar to the clown. The clown used to be, he would move slower when he had the bottle in his hand and he was ready to throw it. He would move a lot slower. But then survivors would change directions and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to throw a pink one. I want to throw a yellow one, or I don't want to throw one at all. Things like that. Well, now the clown doesn't move slow at all. He moves at the same speed. So I don't know why they thought the Lich was going to need to move slower for charging a spell when all of the other killers pretty much don't. I think with the exception of like Huntress and Nurse, but again, that's a lot more range and immediate reward. The increased movement speed while charging is going to be nice too. This feels good. So you're not going to be as punished just for charging your spell, and when you're holding a spell, you move faster. That's going to be really nice. I want to see the balance adjustments for the add-ons. That obviously we're not going to be able to test until we're in-game and able to see him again. But now we're going to get into some of the meat of it, and I'm really excited for these. Increased the duration of his flight spell. It was 3.5 seconds, now it's 4 seconds. Not bad, not bad. Half a second, honestly, is really going to help you capture a lot more ground. He moves so quick when he's flying. Half a second doesn't sound huge, but it is. Increasing friction at the end of the fly spell. So it sounds like normally whenever he does the fly spell, he flies, and then when he ends, like say if you, let's just say you move 30 feet, just as an example, when you move 30 feet, at the end of that 30 feet, he still kind of has a little bit of speed, and he sort of like drifts into it, slides into it a little bit like you're sliding on grease, which was kind of cool. It was fun. But if they're adding friction, it sounds like they're kind of removing that a little bit here, which is okay. It's okay. I didn't mind it, as long as we're not glitching into windows, because there was definitely times that I would like slide on that grease towards a window, and then I'd be stuck inside the window and get caught underneath the map. So, I don't know, maybe that friction will help that not happen. The killer can now collide with survivors as the fly spell ends. So it sounds like we can now move through survivors like normal, like our collision is removed while we're doing it, because it does say specifically when the spell ends. So for the first like maybe 3.5 seconds, we're gonna have zero collision, and then we can do things like block them from going to a pallet, or meet them on the other side of a vault and prevent them from vaulting, or on one side or the other. So I think that'll be nice. That'll be cool. Kind of get a bit of like the Wraith gameplay mechanic in there, where Wraith kind of rushes in front of you and then gets in front of a window and comes out of his Wraith form. Makes sense. Reduced. So these are changes. These are not direct buffs. I'm gonna have to. I gotta wrap my head around this, because this section here, I've got some thoughts about. Reduced Flight of the Damned spawn time to half a second instead of 1 second. So overall, this is interesting because it sounds like buffs, but for me, like high skill survivors seem like they're always able to duck underneath your Flight of the Damned. So Flight of the Damned, if you don't know, Flight of the Damned is when the Lich Vecna summons a line of ghosts in front of him, and then he's able to launch them forward, kind of like the artist, except they don't move all the way across the map. They really only move like a handful of meters in front of you. I want to say it's like maybe 8 to 10 meters at most. It's kind of like it's got like Pyramid Head's length, like the length of Pyramid's Head's line attack. It's got about that length to it. And one big thing that survivors can do is they can crouch. Unless you're bringing the iridescent add-on, survivors can crouch underneath the Flight of the Damned and just not take damage. They can avoid it, which is okay. The problem is Flight of the Damned has it hurts survivors, sure, but if you can just crouch underneath it, a lot of times what you do is you prop it up before a window to prevent them from going through the window, because you can really only hit them if they can crouch underneath it. Survivors oftentimes will run towards a window and then bait the window and then force you to cast it, and then they crouch underneath it and either go through the window or throw the pallet at Shaq or something. That's how a lot of that's going to work. And it doesn't feel very good. It doesn't feel strong. I really feel like I'm only hitting survivors with it whenever I'm casting it through walls or around corners where they can't see it as well. And that's the only time that I'm able to hit it. I feel like the spread of the ghosts is wide enough that survivors can kind of dodge around or in between them. So I personally, I thought, changing it so you didn't need an add-on and that they were automatically lower to the ground would have been better, and then leaving it, because a lot of this, what I guess I should get into the buff. A lot of what they're doing is they spawn faster, they're going to move faster, and then you recover from their speed faster. So a lot of this really is just turning Flight of the Damned into a bait and switch. We're running Shaq, we're looping around Shaq. I'm going to put up Flight of the Damned to basically prevent you from wanting to use Shaq Window. Because if you use Shaq Window, I use Flight of the Damned. If you don't use Shaq Window to avoid Flight of the Damned, you're probably just going to run for the pallet instead. And I either hit you before the pallet, we trade at pallet, or you throw it and I break it. So 3 out of these 4 scenarios, I used Flight of the Damned. You hear what I'm saying? I prop it up to prevent you from using Shaq Window. If you use Shaq Window, then I click the button and cast the spell. If you don't use Shaq Window, then it's all about the pallet, right? And if you're at the pallet, Flight of the Damned is now not doing anything, because you're either throwing the pallet, there's no ghosts. You're either baiting the pallet, there's no ghosts. We're trading at the pallet, there's no ghosts. So, the best situation that I can use Flight of the Damned is still a coin flip, and it's still 50-50 as to whether or not I even want to use my ghosts, because you might not even go for the window. So it just doesn't feel very good in that regard. I feel like the ghosts should be low to the ground in general. And people are, a lot of people would say in response to that, what am I supposed to do if they're low to the ground? What do I do? Just get hit? Like, no, the ghosts are obviously spread apart. Maybe you could increase their spread a little bit. Don't give any of these buffs. Keep it 1 second, keep it 8 milliseconds, and decrease the recovery movement speed. Keep all of the punishment, but make the ghosts lower to the ground. Increase their spread a little bit. That way there's a bit more reward for dodging the ghosts, because now you're actually doing it. Like, you have to pay attention, you have to look behind you, you have to see where the ghosts are coming from, see the direction they're coming at, notice the spread, and then move in between them. It's not just, I can hold W and then I press the crouch button, and completely nullifies the ability. I do not like how they're doing this. I will adjust to it and I'll make it work as best as I can, but I don't like it. Yeah. So it'll be nice that it's faster, so I can try and hit survivors whenever we're around corners or hard walls and stuff. So like, that'll work. I can make it work, but it's not my favorite. Dispelling Sphere is okay. It's not a perk that I've noticed myself getting a lot of benefits from, but I use it. Sometimes I catch survivors off guard, and we notice them with Dispelling Sphere. Increasing Dispelling Sphere duration to 25 seconds instead of 20 is nice. It'll cover some of the bigger maps a lot better. It's also going to move a lot faster, so the fact that it lasts longer and is faster, that actually might help. Give me some information on further away generators that maybe it wasn't reaching before, so maybe there's some utility there. I'm not upset with it. I'm not wowed by it, but I'm not upset by it either. Mage Hand is going to be interesting. So the time to lift the pallet is actually cut down considerably by almost 30%. Actually, exactly 30%. That'll be nice. So we can actually, without any add-ons, lift pallets with Mage Hand 30% faster. And then the recovery from your original movement speed is going to come back a lot faster. Increase Mage Hand recovery movement speed to 3.68. That'll be nice. Just feels a little bit better. If survivors throw a pallet, we can lift it, and because there were actively times that survivors would throw a pallet to kind of like pre-drop pallet against Vecna. You'd use Mage Hand in anticipation of kind of like lifting it and continuing the chase, but you'd lift it and start moving forward, and then survivors could throw the pallet again before you came out of your Mage Hand cast, and before you could even really catch up again. So it's like, cool, they threw a pallet, I use Mage Hand, and I start moving forward, and then they throw the pallet again, and I'm still stuck on the other side of it, and now I don't have Mage Hand. So it's a big time waster for me, and that sounds like it's going to be managed and gone away. I like that. I do think that's needed. This is huge. This is huge. So this is for the legendary items. When survivors are playing against Vecna, they will have random chests spawn around the map, just like Nemesis, Wesker, things like that. There's random chests that spawn around the map, and when you interact with these chests, it rolls a die, a d20. If it happens to land on a 20, then you get a legendary item. It's either the Eye of Vecna or the Hand of Vecna. The Vecna items did not really have much of a negative penalty for survivors. They just kind of had a lot of prerequisites to use them, but they didn't have any setbacks, any drawbacks for using them, which I think was allowing for a lot of abuse, very obvious abuse. One of the legendary items says that as long as you're at full health, you can enter a locker using this item, and as long as you fast enter a locker while holding the Hand of Vecna, you jump in the locker, and then it teleports you to a very far away locker at the other side of the map. And when you pop out of that locker, you're injured. That injury didn't really matter. If you popped up and you happened to be near teammates, or if you had a good med kit, or hell, if you were building towards it, you could use botany knowledge and self-care and heal before the killer even got there. And by the time the killer finds you again, you can just hop in the locker again, teleport across the map, jump back out, and then heal. Like, it didn't matter. So you could just infinitely bait the killer for with zero punishment. And now it's going to inflict broken. It's going to inflict the broken status effect for 30 seconds. So you you not only can't heal as quickly, but you're going to remain injured for a longer period of time, and then you still have to heal on top of that. Probably making it closer to a realistic, like, 45 seconds if you're timing it perfectly to heal up, which is good. If the killer is chasing you specifically for whatever reason, if the killer is really focused on that one survivor trying to lock down the person that has the legendary item or the Hand of Vecna, this is going to be really good. Decrease the aura reveal by magic items to 1.5 seconds instead of 3. That'll be interesting. I don't think it's huge, but it's there, so we'll see how that affects. I think I need to play with this to see if it really does anything for me. Other than that, a lot of the changes are kind of meh. Vecna got a lot of huge stuff. I would say it's mostly a buff for Vecna. Maybe some preferential stuff for me. One of Blight's add-ons got changed. They kind of they nerfed Compound 33 too much. They brought it down to 3 overall tokens, and now it's 5, so that's good. Bardic Inspiration's kind of an interesting one. I think this is going to be interesting because we're going to see so much of Bardic Inspiration when this goes live. I'm almost 100% certain we're going to see a ton of it. I am curious. I'm curious how this is going to play out. So what it's going from is instead of the duration and the buff lasting for 60 seconds, it's now going to last for 90 seconds, which honestly isn't bad because if the cooldown is a full 90 seconds, so is the buff. So you have to use Bardic Inspiration less often, and the buff lasts longer. The buff is gonna last as long as it takes for the cooldown to use the buff. So, like, I don't know, this feels nice. Everything else is really meh. Most of the rest of the perks don't feel like they're gonna be in the game or see much use. So their changes don't matter a lot. I'm just being realistic. It increased the aura reading range from 24 meters to 18 meters. Still say its range was a little low. We've extended it to 24 meters. This can be further increased with the perk Open-Handed. That'll be interesting. Weave Attunement, meh. Increased aura reading range from 12 meters to 8. Dark Arrogance, again, another perk that I just, beyond using this in something silly like, the tier 4 Michael Myers builds and stuff, I think that's what everyone has agreed on since this perk was originally showcased and shown. What it does is it increases your vault speed. Originally it was by 20%, but you also experienced like a 35% harder stun time if you got stunned by pallets, which is huge. That's so much distance that survivors can get on you for being able to vault a window, 1/5 faster than usual. And now instead of being 1/5, it's now 1/4. So, like, sure, I guess we're still probably never going to use this outside of like haha meme builds. But when we're talking about using Vecna in high tier, high MMR play and competitive play, Dark Arrogance is never going to see play. It's just not going to be there. And that's pretty much it. That pretty much sums up everything for it. We're still expecting all of the changes and nerfs that we're going to see. Cannibals getting buffed, Deathslingers getting buffed, Mastermind is getting nerfed a little bit. Good Guy, Chucky, is getting a pretty significant nerf. He can't shuffle underneath pallets anymore without using his lunge, which is awesome because if he's using his lunge ability and misses, it cancels his ability to shuffle. He can't hide and hidey-ho anymore. So this is going to be great. He'll feel a lot better to go up against. He doesn't just ignore pallet mechanics. Yeah. These will be interesting. The toolboxes, I don't know, a lot of people didn't pay attention to this when it was coming out, but it is big and it's important. Every single toolbox is getting a base sabotage speed increase. So they're kind of doing with toolboxes like they did with flashlights. They want to see more toolbox play. I think this is going to be problematic for a lot of the high MMR and competitive players. This is going to be wildly competitive for high MMR and competitive players. Um, Super problematic for killers and super beneficial for survivors, which is horrible because in high MMR, it's typically more beneficial to go for sabos than it is flashlights. Flashlights are just inconsistent and it's really easy to ignore them. You can face walls, you can face clutter, and just you've got built-in lightborn. As long as you're facing clutter, you can't get flashlighted. You can't, however, do anything about a survivor that has sprint burst, background player, or anything of the sort that happens to run to the hook. If they make a good 50-50 guess as to what hook you're going to, and they sabo it, then you either leave the survivor slug that you already have, or you drop them and they get free, and now you have to chase the injured survivor all over again. But with increased sabo speed, what's happening is all toolboxes are getting increased sabo speeds, and the sabo speed for the add-ons are getting buffed as well. And the reason that's a problem is, as it stands right now, if you approach a hook and you go to sabotage it, but the killer's there carrying a survivor, they can hit you and interrupt it. Well, now you start working on it and you start saboing again, and usually the cooldown for the killer hitting you is fast enough, or slow enough rather, that you'll be able to sabotage the hook, but you're going to get hit a second time and you're going to go down. So it kind of turns into a trade at that point, which is okay. You know, if you only have one hook, but your buddy's got two, and you saboed the hook, and now you're trading, instead of losing a survivor, you just lose a hook state. Well, now with increased sabo speeds, you might get to the hook and get interrupted, but because the hit cooldown for killer is going to remain the same, but the sabo speed is increased significantly. It's increased at base, it's increased on 2 different add-ons. You stack both of those add-ons on, and now you can dismantle a hook fully without getting hit a second time, which essentially means you're not really getting punished, you're just losing a health state, and both survivors get to go free. So on high MMR, on more competitive MMR, this, which has already been seeing a lot of gameplay, this is going to get abused. I think this is going to get heavily abused, and I think they're going to pull back a little bit. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to decrease the base sabo speed and keep the add-on buffs, or if they're going to nerf the add-on buffs and keep the base sabo. I don't know what the right call is. If I had to guess, I would say just increase base sabo speed a little bit. Maybe make it a little bit easier for people on a lower skill to get a little bit better add-ons, but like don't buff all 3 of these and just make it impossible, because you're tanking the high MMR. You really are. But yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. I'm excited for the chapter overall. I'm excited to see more decimated Borgo in the kind of green-blue hue. I think that's going to be fun. The new perk meta shakeup is going to be awesome. Background player getting nerfed, buckle up getting nerfed, invocation weaving spiders getting buffed. It'll be fun. What do you guys think? What do you think? What do you think about my thoughts on Flight of the Damned? You know, it's kind of where I stand with it. You heard all my thoughts. Until then, I will see you guys very soon. We'll have to play this when it comes out here in about a week. All right, love you guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.